The Iowa Archaeological Society has chapters all over the state, and of course the state archaeologist's office is in contact constantly for educational purposes and field trips and so on. One of the fellows that I met fairly early on in my stay in Iowa was a fellow named Pid, that was what he went by, Pidcock, and his wife Thelma. And people would always bring artifacts to these regional meetings. And as a matter of fact, this was a state meeting up in McGregor, and Pidcock showed up with this thing that was a little bigger than a walnut, as I recall, and it looked kind of like a nut. And so we immediately started calling it Pidcock's nut. We put a little note in the box, and we sent it around the banquet table that night so everybody could take a look at it because nobody knew what it was. It was obviously a botanical specimen of some kind, but we didn't know. So anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff because Jeff's the guy who figured out what Pidcock's nut really was.
Well, I recognized it as a super large specimen, the largest I had ever seen, of coal age seed and Trigonocarpus, the genus Trigonocarpus. And so if you go down to Iowa Hall and you're standing there looking at the reconstruction of the coal swamp and gaze over to your left, there's a whole series of specimens that are that the models are based on. And one of those is a casting of Pidcock's nut. I think somebody in the museum
made a silicone mold of it.
Made a silicone mold of it. It looks exactly like the original, but it spared the original being tied up there. And then if you gaze in and look up, you'll see that there's a giant kind of fern-like thing which has similar seeds hanging from it. And so those, the leaves, the stems, and so forth of the plants in that reconstruction, you can gaze over and actually see fossil specimens that they're based on.
Comment on the coal swamp. Everything in Iowa Hall, with one or two exceptions, is based on Iowa specimens. We didn't go out of state to get something. The dinosaur vertebrae, yes, it came from out of state. We had to have something in there for it. But that was done by Rush Studios, and he's known for his skull swamp dioramas. And I came in one day, and Rush and his people were there, Richard Rush were there, and they were installing this diorama. And I looked down there, and if you look at down on the floor of the exhibit, there's something that looks like a snake. It's not a snake. It's a legless amphibian. And I said, Richard, we haven't found any evidence of that in Iowa. That really doesn't belong in Iowa Hall. And you'll also notice that there are large roaches on the tree. And I said, the same for roaches. I don't think we've found any roaches. And his reply was, I wrote these into the contract. I owe these to you, and therefore they're going to be there. Really a fabulous man.
And then we found the steam tunnels here are full of roaches.
For free.
It brings to mind a couple of little funny details about some of the specimens down there. There's a beautiful specimen of a crinoid that's in the Mississippian area. I think it's Mississippian anyway. It's the thick one, especially high relief on that piece. There's a deed to that rock, a specific deed that was written from the original, the people where over in LeGrand, Iowa, where the crinoids are supposedly the best in the world, and undoubtedly are. They donated the specimen to the Museum of Natural History way back when, and there was a deed written for it. And that deed used to accompany the specimen, including being underneath the rock on display in Iowa Hall. I doubt that it's still there today, but it may be in a probably in a repository. But it.
Is this better? Can you hear me? There was a site called the West Broken Kettle site over in the Loess Hills in Plymouth County, and we were trying to do something a little bit different with a bird's eye view, and we didn't even know if it would be possible or if it would work. And George, maybe you remember which contractor did that. Deaton did it. I should have known. Anyway, he pulled it off, I thought, so that it did look like you're sort of flying over this site, and with the little houses and so forth. We'd made models of the houses and we'd excavated the houses, but we weren't able to. We didn't have the space to just lay it flat on a table. So that's all I can tell you. It seemed like a good idea that turned out to be a good idea.
I have to say one of the most
And I want to thank the staff of the Museum of Natural History. They've done an extraordinary job keeping this place going and getting ready for today. For myself, from the museum, and on behalf of the university, we thank you for what you did 25 years ago and the legacy you've left. It is cherished, it is well observed, and the museum is very thankful for this. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the afternoon. I'm sure you'll have lots of questions yet. And please, folks, come downstairs to Iowa Hall and have some punch and cookies. Thank you.